It was a typical Friday night, and my friends and I were looking for something to do. We'd grown tired of the usual movie marathons and video games. As the clock approached midnight, Tom suggested we try something different, something he had read about online. "Ever heard of the Charlie Challenge?" Tom asked, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Sarah and I exchanged curious glances. "Isn't that just some silly internet game?" I replied, skeptical but intrigued. "Supposedly, it's a way to communicate with spirits," Tom said. "They say it works best at 3 a.m., the witching hour." Despite my reservations, I agreed. I'd always been fascinated by the paranormal, even if I didn't entirely believe in it. Sarah was a bit more apprehensive, but her curiosity got the better of her. We set up in my living room, the only light coming from a single flickering candle. Tom placed a piece of paper on the table, divided into 4 quadrants with yes and no written in each corner. He balanced 2 pencils on top of each other in the shape of a cross. As the clock struck 3 a.m., Tom took a deep breath. Charlie, are you here?" We waited in silence, the tension in the room palpable. At first, nothing happened. I felt a mix of relief and disappointment. Then, slowly, the top pencil began to move. It wobbled for a moment before pointing to yes. Sarah gasped. "Okay, that's creepy." Tom's face lit up. "See? I told you it works. Let's ask another question." We took turns asking simple questions, mostly out of curiosity, like "Are you a good spirit?" and "How old are you?" Each time, the pencil moved, albeit slowly and shakily. It was enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Then, things took a darker turn. Tom, emboldened by our previous success, decided to push the boundaries. Charlie, do you want to hurt us?" he asked. The pencil spun violently to yes. The air in the room grew colder, and a sense of dread washed over me. "Maybe we should stop," I suggested, my voice trembling. "Don't be scared," Tom said, though I could see the fear in his eyes. "It's just a game." But it didn't feel like a game anymore. Sarah hugged her knees to her chest, her eyes darting around the room. "Tom, seriously, let's stop." Tom reluctantly agreed and asked the final question. Charlie, can we stop?" The pencil didn't move. We waited, but it remained stubbornly still. I felt a wave of panic rise within me. "Tom, what's happening?" Before he could respond, the candle flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. I fumbled for my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the blackness, illuminating our frightened faces. "Okay, this isn't funny anymore," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "We need to end this." Tom nodded and stood up to turn on the lights. As he reached for the switch, the room seemed to vibrate with a low, ominous hum. The walls creaked, and the temperature continued to drop. Suddenly, the pencils flew off the table, clattering to the floor. "What the hell was that?" I shouted, backing away from the table. Sarah screamed, pointing to the corner of the room. In the dim light, I saw a shadowy figure standing there, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It was a child-sized figure, but its presence was far from innocent. "Who are you?" Tom demanded, his voice breaking. The figure stepped forward, and as it did, the hum grew louder, almost deafening. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the very air around us had turned hostile. The figure's eyes bored into mine, and I felt a coldness seep into my bones. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Sarah's hand and pulling her toward the door. We scrambled out of the living room, Tom following close behind. As we reached the hallway, the door slammed shut behind us with a force that shook the house. We didn't stop running until we were outside, gasping for breath in the cold night air. "What was that?" Sarah cried, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "But we're not going back in there." We spent the rest of the night at Tom's house, too terrified to sleep. The next day, we returned to my house to gather our things. The living room was eerily quiet, the Ouija board and pencils scattered on the floor. We quickly packed up and left, vowing never to speak of the Charlie challenge again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. For weeks, I felt like I was being watched, and strange things started happening around my house, objects moving on their own, whispers in the dark, and that same oppressive cold. We had opened a door to something beyond our understanding, and I feared that it would never truly close.